What is up, everyone? Welcome to Mystical Monday.
Yeah.
Well, today we are going to be talking about paranormal hoaxes.
Mm-hmm.
Paranormal hoaxes. So there's, plenty of those to go around. I think that's one of the main things you see, like old
Yeah.
pictures of.
I absolutely believe in the paranormal, but
Oh yeah, it's the
unfortunately,
most faked thing
yeah.
possible, and that sucks for us because we're in a group that we try to like prove the existence of it or
Mhm.
whatever. So like we're not in it to try to like find the best stuff. We just want to be real 100% with everything that we have.
Yep. It's really
So
sad that people think they have to fake stuff, man.
yeah, they make it really hard for us to do our job, so that
Mhm.
sucks. But we couldn't mention paranormal hoaxes without starting it off with the good old Loch Ness monster.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so this thing is gone back into like ancient times. Like it's not just a newer developed idea. This is something that goes all the way back to stone carvings.
Really?
They have like a weird looking thing that has fins and flippers, but it doesn't look like anything that we've seen as far as like that we've been able to like categorize.
You think it's something that maybe did exist at one point? Or?
Probably I would say it's like maybe we're talking about all the way back to like Stone Age,
Yeah.
and dinosaurs. I mean, come on.
Right.
They existed. It's a thing. So I mean, I think maybe that's maybe where it started, but this thing doesn't exist anymore. But
Right.
the myth lives on forever. There was one instance in 1852 where all of the villagers brought out pitchforks to battle a sea serpent, which turned out to be a horse taking a bath.
A horse taking a bath?
That is correct. And I'm like, how do you get that mixed up? I'm not really sure how, like, a horse. I don't even, first of all, know how a horse would give itself a bath. So there's that.
Yeah.
But, especially I don't know how you can mistake that, I don't know, maybe the darkness, maybe they can't see, they didn't have electricity back then, which would totally suck if you're just like going out in the dark with a flame, that doesn't put much in front of you. So it's possible, I guess, that someone got creeped out, but in the long run, we're talking about a horse in the river taking a bath. So it's pretty interesting. Yeah. So I mean, there's been a whole bunch of different things as far as like evidence that people have found over time. So we're starting with one of them that he found these footprints. He was a big game hunter, and he went up there and he tried to hunt the Loch Ness monster, and he was tracking with all the footprints, and he comes up to the shore and he finds these huge, like 7 foot, no, actually 20 foot long, like footprints. And you're like, what in the world could that possibly be? So he thought that he had found the evidence to the Loch Ness monster, and it turns out it was a hippo track. Hippos.
Hippos are scary.
Hippos will straight up, they're dangerous. They're like one of the most dangerous animals, and people like don't put them on the shelf where they should be.
Right.
Like, oh, they're just a hippo. Those things will kill you.
Yeah,
it's like wild hogs. They're insane.
Yeah.
They're just crazy.
Anyway,
yeah. So anyways, when you think of the Loch Ness monster, what is the first thing you think of? The black and white picture.
Yeah.
From like the 1930s. It was the iconic version of the Loch Ness monster. You see it on everything. I mean, at this point with the internet, things have kind of, people have busted myths all day long. And so it's hard to tell like how long something can go like this. But I mean, at the time, we're talking about just photography just starting to be a thing. So it was very easy because it was a high definition, you know. So I mean, of course, it's easy to fake, and that's why I feel like a lot of alien stuff that's like the grainy, there's just so much room for error.
Yeah, it's like, why does every picture of anything like that look like the worst picture ever taken?
Yeah, exactly. So it's like just blurry, and you're just like, oh, it'd be so good if it was just a little bit like, it's kind of almost like you know, gas station cameras. You know, it's
Yeah.
like, why even have them? Like, why do
Mhm.
you have them? There's no point. It literally is like a blur.
Yeah, when you gotta have help identifying who someone is,
Yeah, it's like, can you
you
just
got to
get like
push
a
that
high def
button.
camera or don't have one at all? Because now you're just getting our hopes up because, you know, it's just a black blob.
Right.
That always annoyed me really, really bad. But anyway, if you know that whole story, which most people do, um, basically this guy, his name is Robert Wilson, and in 1934, he took a toy submarine and wrapped it with black plastic and had a plastic head stuck to it. And he just kind of put that in there and put it at a distance, and there you go.
Wow.
And it's like, how did no one see that when he did that? I guess that's maybe my first question. That's strange, but yeah, he got away with it for years, and ever since then, scientists have basically been trying to find the bones from the creature, you know, because you would think if it lived there, there has to be more than one,
Hmm.
you know. But they have dredged the lake multiple times trying to find, you know, bone and that sort of thing, and they have never found it. And they've actually used sonar scans too. It just didn't turn up anything.
Right.
So, you know, it's kind of, there's just really no way that
Hmm.
could exist. And then there's also like the saying of like whatever it is, would be a reptile, and it's too cold up there. We're talking like way too cold. So
Yeah, that makes sense. But
it's a great idea, and you know, it's one of those things where you're just, you know, the ultimate paranormal thing, but there's no way that that exists in my opinion.
me neither. I don't think that it's a real thing. Very fabricated.
Very much so.
I got one for you.
All right.
All right, this is the case of the accidental time traveler.
Mm.
Okay, and this is how the story goes. One night in 1950, a strange figure appeared in the middle of a traffic clogged intersection in New York City's famous Times Square. Okay, he wore a silk hat, a tight coat, and a vest, and he boasted an admirable set of thick mutton chop sideburns.
Oh, wow.
Sideburns. Witnesses said the man looked startled, and he gawked around at the surroundings as if he'd never seen a car or traffic lights before. And then he ran for the curb, and he was hit by a cab and killed him.
Whoa.
Okay. And when the police searched the man's pockets, they found a 19th century currency. They found a bill for the feeding and stabling of one horse. And they found a business card for a man named Rudolph Fentz who lived on Fifth Avenue. And tracking down the address, they found an old woman who confirmed that Rudolph Fentz was in fact her father-in-law, and he had mysteriously disappeared in 1876. So,
What?
70-something years, this guy disappeared, and he just popped up at Times Square 70-something years later. And then he got hit by a cab and straight up died. And so that's the story of Rudolph Fentz, the accidental time traveler. And for decades, paranormalists across Europe pointed to Fentz's appearance as existence of time travel. Well, it was completely and utterly made up. It is actually a story from a book in 1951. It was a science fiction book by Jack Finney. He told that exact story in his book, and people have taken that story from the book and retold it to people over and over again until it's become something that everyone thinks is true.
Isn't that insane? Like,
Yes.
you can bend reality at this point. You just tell a story long enough.
It's even been rewritten a few times in different ways, in different books since then.
Interesting. That's so crazy. I mean,
Yeah.
that makes sense, though. You know,
Yeah. People
it,
actually try to use that as evidence of time travel, but
it's just
it's not a
made
real
up
story.
in a
Made up
book.
completely. Yeah.
It's crazy. That's one of the things you would see on like unsolved mysteries in the 80s. You know, like, what happened to him? Was he a time traveler? We'll never know because he died.
Yeah.
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 That's pretty crazy. I can't say I've heard that one. I don't know how.
I know. I mean,
It's very
when I was
interesting.
reading it, I was like, "This sounds really interesting." And then I got to the part where they said, "Oh, it's by the way, it's completely fabricated. It's from a book." I was like, "Really?"
Yeah. Even though you literally just looked up like paranormal hoaxes and you're like, you're ready to like
Well, I didn't
be
expect it to
foiled.
be from a book. I expected it to be like a man that had faked it and then got offed by a cab by accident.
Oh,
You know,
wow.
but
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, okay, so the next ones I have is one people that I've never heard of before either, but basically, there's three sisters. They're called the Fox sisters.
Okay.
There was mid 1800s. The names were Leah, Maggie, and Catherine, and I don't know. I guess they had like a very big imagination because they used to take in their room. They would take a string and they would throw it over and tie an apple to the end and throw it over the wall and it'd go down between the wall,
Mm-hmm.
and then they would like bang against the wall and they would scare their mom essentially,
Wow.
trying to get her to think that it's paranormal. Well, the mom's kind of flipping out a little bit because I mean, her thought is that the kids are too young to like do that kind of prank.
Yeah.
But like, it's not that difficult, but still, it's strange. How do you come up with that idea? Well, eventually they set up a system of knocks that represented yes and no, which is kind of the same thing that we do today.
Right.
So I would say maybe this is kind of where it all started, like, coming up with a theme of like yes or no,
Mm-hmm.
how many bumps. So the kids just kept doing this, and the mom figured out how to do the yes or no questions. And so she's just sitting there talking to the wall, thinking that she's getting answers to something, and the kids are all just laughing. They called the entity Splitfoot, which is actually a nickname for the devil.
Mm.
So we're going with demonic here, I guess. And they said it was the spirit of a man named Charles B. Rosna who was murdered 5 years earlier and buried in their cellar. And their neighbors claimed to have dug up under their cellar and found pieces of bones. So this was a very well known thing throughout this whole area. So everyone knew of this neighbor that's digging up bones, supposedly.
Mm-hmm.
But there was never any missing person ever identified as Charles B. Rosna, so it's more than likely not true. And then years later, they find out that, all of that wasn't true. But anyway, the sisters became mediums because they realized they could make money off of this. Like, they can make people pay for these things that they go through and their little investigations and make money off of all these people. So it's the age-old tale of the mediums who are pulling one over. But basically what they would do is their investigation was completely in the dark. So they would just tie strings around their toes and they would do it that way. Like, they would completely control like each individual toe on their foot. And then that one would do each different knocks, different heights and
That's
stuff
so
like
crazy
that.
that somebody will go to that length.
Yeah, it is. It's
Do
crazy.
that.
And they like freaking they destroyed everything. Like, literally everyone believed this for like a long time. And then they kind of started to notice there was this guy that was called E.P. Longworthy. He investigated the sisters because he always noted how the knockings or the raps always came from under their feet when their dresses were in contact with the floor.
Mm-hmm.
So he had them set up in a control room. And from the control, they discovered that the raps did not occur if the sisters were placed on a couch with cushions under their feet. It's only if their feet were touching the floor.
Right.
So obviously, they figured out that it was a huge hoax, and they had one pulled over on them. And they actually entered. There was this in 1857 in the Boston Courier. There was a prize of $500, which back then I don't know how much that would be now. To
When?
any medium,
1857?
yeah,
Yeah, that's a lot of
1857.
money,
That's a lot
man.
of money.
Yeah.
Yeah, so any medium that could demonstrate their paranormal ability to the committee, then they would win that money. And they attempted to win the prize, and they were investigated by three Harvard professors, and they failed the test. They concluded that the raps were produced by the bone and the feet movement. So they'd also do like things where they like crunch their toe and they could like make it pop like that, and that would be considered part of it.
That's crazy.
But they're in the dark, so how would anyone know?
Right.
That's kind of how that went under. And at the very end, there was a relative of the Fox family. She admitted in a signed statement that she had assisted them during some of their seances, and by touching them to indicate when the rap should be made. So they would just do this by snapping their toes and bending their knees and ankles. So yeah, that's pretty much that story.
That's so crazy.
Pretty
Man.
crazy.
How
Those
intricate
links that people will go to
yeah.
be fake. You could have put more energy into that.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, people we have a paranormal group that we go on investigations around the state of Arkansas, and I can't imagine faking something because eventually someone's gonna find out.
Yeah, I don't want I want my name to be 100% I'm doing this because I want to explain paranormal, not because I want to make up stuff and try to get views. But there are a lot of people out there like that.
It's just crazy, man.
It is.
All right, well, I got one more, and this is a big one. I'm sure you've heard of crop circles.
Ah, yes. Of course.
Do you think there are real crop circles?
I don't even know because I've seen so many things about it, but there's some that are so intricate, it's really hard to think that someone could do that without having an overview of it. It's just, and they're just perfectly spaced apart. I don't know.
So, this story. So, in the 1980s, a series of increasingly intricate patterns emerged in the barley and wheat fields of farmers in Wiltshire, England. And they dubbed these things crop circles. I'm assuming that this is when this whole phenomenon started. So they were breathtaking, unexplained formations that drew crowds of tourists and intense speculation about their origin. And so there's these things called, I think it's serologists, and they're basically crop circle junkies. So they hypothesized that the circles, which always appeared overnight, were either from landing pads for alien spacecraft, or they could be coded messages from a higher intelligence or symbols downloaded to our collective subconscious. And it helps that Wiltshire is also home to Stonehenge, where this all started.
Yeah.
So people think that was made by aliens as well. I don't know. And so it says, only Doug Bauer and Dave Chorley knew the real story. They were drinking buddies, and they were part-time watercolor artists.
Watercolor artists? How do you get that title?
And they had been making all these crop circles in Wiltshire by hand or by foot, mostly since the 1970s. And they did not get caught until 1991. So they did this for 21 years. They would just get together and drink at night and go out in Wiltshire, and they would make crop circles in these people's farms overnight using tools, rope and flat wood boards. And
yeah, they put 2x4s on their feet and walked through it.
And they would go out there and make crop circles.
How did they ever explain the symmetry of it? How it was so perfect? How did they do that?
They were artists, man. Getting those watercolors. Intense work.
Yeah.
It wasn't until 1991 that Bauer and Chorley confessed their role in the artistic hoax, which they then had grown to include many, many other people that were also doing this hoax by that time. So
that is insane. So there's just a bunch of artists out there that are just making crop circles. Okay, well, I guess, good on them if they can make that symmetry while they're drunk. Good on them. They deserve it.
A perfect circle is hard to draw. I can't imagine.
Yeah, I know. That's what I'm saying. No point of reference. I guess now you could use drones, but
maybe it's not super perfect. Maybe it just looks perfect from far away.
So are we talking? Literally every single crop circle is not real, or just the ones they made.
I think it starts here, but this hoax was something that once people started seeing crop circles, they started to do it themselves.
So you just really can't ever tell. It could be anybody.
Right, yeah.
That's a bummer. Well, I've got one last one, and we can't leave this one off. Bigfoot. Bigfoot, my homie. So normally he's found in the forests of North America, and he's described as hairy, muscular, about 6'9" to 7 feet tall. And even some of his prints show to have claws in them. Some of them don't, and they look like an ape kind of foot. And then some of them look like a human type of foot.
All right.
I've never seen one with claws on it, but supposedly that's the thing. I think that the original story of all of this started when, back in the natives they actually called big animals Bigfoot. So like anything that they saw that was like a deer or an elk that was local to the area and was huge, and they see it all the time, that's Bigfoot. And so that's kind of how it started with naming. They would name random animals that were the big animals. So you'd be like, oh yeah, I saw Bigfoot today. So that's kind of cool. About 1/3 of all claims of Bigfoot sightings are actually located on the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah.
So they have those huge trees, and it looks like just Fern Gully. So awesome. Have you ever been there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh man, it's like one of my favorite spots. The Pacific Northwest. It's like you're like in a jungle or something.
Yeah.
It's insane. Like it's just so cool to be out in nature. And they have all those waterfalls and stuff. Anyways, long story short, it's pretty awesome. If you haven't done it, you should definitely do it. But mainly, the Bigfoot nowadays is always going to be a misidentification of an animal, or someone is dressed up like an actual Bigfoot item.
Yeah.
There's been so many of these that are actually hoax that I can't even name them all off, to be honest with you. There's one guy that he was dressed up in a Bigfoot costume, and he was like trying to like scare people, and he happened to be in the way when a motorist came by, and it scared him so bad they ran over him. He died.
Wow.
Yeah, in his little Bigfoot suit. So that's kind of weird, but that's happened. And then they've had a bunch of things where there was rewards to get a picture of Bigfoot or a body of Bigfoot. And this one guy, he said that he killed one, and he had the body of it, but he didn't want to release it because if they released it, he was afraid people would try to take it from him.
Right.
So he basically like hid this thing for years and years, and then they finally did a like an X-ray on it, and scientists were able to go through and see what the hair and everything was made out of, and it was just a dummy that he built. But then he later said, actually, I did kill him. That's a replica of what I killed him, but I don't want to bring him out. I'm just gonna, because I can't trust people. It's just like, dude, just give it up. Just give it up already.
Man.
It's ridiculous.
A lot of people do stuff like that. It's just like people are just so full of crap.
Yeah, they're just
to get a little
so
like
full
50
of
minutes of
crap.
fame.
It's like, why do you need that kind of energy all the time? But anyway, so you have your misidentifications. They're usually like elk or bear. There's been a couple of pictures that are supposed to be a Bigfoot, and then they decided that they were an ape.
Yeah. I've seen some really convincing videos.
Yeah. But how easy is it to just put on a costume and just walk in the distance? I mean, you can make that look creepy.
I remember watching. They were trying to debunk this one famous video. I can't remember who did it. It was like a video of like basically Bigfoot was walking to the right side of the camera frame, and they were following him, and then he turns around and looks at him, and then he keeps walking.
Oh yeah, that's the most iconic one.
Yeah, and they tried to like study that and basically like study the movements and study like the length of his arms and like see if it could be a real person or if they walked like a person could not walk. I think they were pretty inconclusive about it, but it was pretty much the opinion of them that it was a hoax.
Yeah.
So,
well, I've actually heard that the guy that took the film, that before he died, he actually admitted that there was someone in a suit.
Unreal.
Yeah. So don't quote me on that, but I'm pretty sure he did, because I remember being like, man,
Mm-hmm.
But you've also got that all over the world. So you've got Bigfoot over here, and then you've got like Abominable Snowman,
and the Yeti.
Yeah, and the Yeti, and so they're all over. And I think people just really want to believe in giants. I mean, we come from a history of some native people, I guess. But like they all thought about the spirits and like how that could be. So I don't know. I think they had lots of stories about giants and dwarves and that sort of thing, and that's just like always been in folklore.
Right.
And it's just is what it is. And so I think it did start, with the Native Americans calling Bigfoot as red on things, because I'm sure that got passed along for many, 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 many generations. But I mean, that's pretty much it on the Bigfoot front. Um, there's just not enough evidence, and I feel like if there were Bigfoot, whatever you want to call it, out there, we would have found bones
Would
by
have found
now.
it, yeah.
And people always say, oh, animals could scatter the bones, but yeah, they could. But at what point would we someday stumble over a huge femur that's like way bigger than a human would be?
Yeah.
So that just cuts it out for me. Until we find bone evidence, I don't see how that's a thing.
I mean, if there were actual, like, proven, like, if somebody could have proved it in some way, I would love to know about that. Any of the stuff we just talked about. If any of our listeners out there have any evidence, or if they have something that maybe we haven't seen that kind of proves one of these things is maybe real, I'd love to see it.
Oh yeah, I always have an open mind on everything. I mean, I'm not going to
Yeah.
go into it being like no way, but I hate stupid hoax videos. So please none of those because I just hate them so much. Please, let's just be real. So yeah, anybody has any good evidence of anything, let us know. And I guess that wraps it up for our paranormal hoaxes.
Hmm.
Thanks for joining, you guys.
Appreciate it. We will see you next week.
Later.